Great to talk to you again. I know we didn't get to our normal segment yesterday because we had State Representative Julie Mayberry on. Didn't get to our normal segment yesterday on the Conduit Scorecard, but let's go ahead and get to it. It's week number 7 of the Conduit Scorecard. It's up right now at Conduit News. And, of course, it starts out reviewing some of the other things that were on there last week. But let's start with State Representative Les Warren. He has a bill, HB 1642. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so this bill by Representative Warren would remove the certificate requirement for those who are doing natural hair braiding. So right now, a person has to pay $30 a year, sign an affidavit that they've been practicing for 2 years, an affidavit by an employer or customer who has witnessed them practicing for 2 years. And if you're coming from another state, Paul, you have to take a test, all of that just to get a certificate to perform natural hair braiding in the state. So this bill would just set out that certificate. It just goes line by line in the bill and strikes all that. So it's not one of the more burdensome occupational licenses in the state compared to some others, but nonetheless, it is a removal of a government permission slip that prohibits people from engaging in this profession.
And I love bills like this. Like I said, it might be small, but it's very easy to support because you're like, well, of course, why is this happening to begin with? And so it's good. And by the way, we reached out to State Representative Les Warren to have him on the program, in contact with him. And so hopefully we'll get him on soon to talk a little bit more about this. Just, how did he, come up with this idea and everything. And, I've been doing this for a while now. This isn't the first time that we've tried to allow hair braiders to braid hair, people that just want to work. So seems like there just seems to be more and more regulation for hair braiders over the last couple of years. Let's go to this other bill now, because there's one bill of support. There's 3 bills on the scorecard this week. So bill number 2 is HB 1568. And this is something that is opposed by Conduit. What can you tell us about HB 1568?
So 1568 is basically the House version of a bill we talked about a few weeks ago, Senate Bill 192 by Senator Missy Urban. They tweaked it a little bit, the makeup of this new healthcare council, which will be able to basically lobby legislators with the unified voice of the healthcare industry. And so what this bill would do is it set up this council. It would have members from all these different healthcare professions and those boards of licensing to sit on this council and basically evaluate, provide recommendations to the General Assembly regarding scope of practice changes, licensure changes. And so what you've seen, Paul, especially this session, is it is very, very hard to expand the scope of practice for, say, a nurse practitioner. It's very hard to deregulate almost any profession in the healthcare industry. And what I'm really worried about with this bill, it's going to give a unified, strong lobbying voice, and where they can come to the end of the table and say, well, hey, what's the healthcare council think about this? Well, we oppose this. Well, okay, if 20 different boards of licensing are opposed to it, that's going to make it hard for legislators to vote on it, I think. So I think there's plenty of safeguards right now for the public health and safety, and this really just goes an extra step that is not needed right now.
Yeah, it seems like every 2 years, what we're really seeing is the medical society and these other entities. They're just very annoyed that they always have to try to beat back. Now they claim it's public safety, but in many cases, it's not about public safety. It's about protecting people's money, and which really translates to they don't want more choice and lower costs for consumers. They want to be protectionist. That seems to be the case. And I'm glad you brought up how difficult it is. Now, it has been extremely difficult during these scope of practice weeks to get anything through. And so what you're saying here is this would set up a new council, and the council is tasked with providing evaluation and recommendations. I have heard some legislators, and this is what I really kind of want to get out in front of this if I can. I've heard some legislators say, I'm not a professional. I'm not a doctor. I'm not this or I'm not that. And I'm on this committee and I'm being asked to expand the scope of practice for something that it's not necessarily my field. And so there might be some legislators that say, well, because of that, I want this new council formed. But I'm sitting here saying, no, come on. If it's about the public safety, you can interpret data. You can analyze results. That's what people elect you for. They elect you to determine whether or not people can work within their scope of practice. I mean, that's why. And so I think this would be giving up in a lot of ways the constitutional authority that, we give our legislators when we vote for them.
Yeah, and, Paul, there's already special rules that push back when these scope of practice bills are heard. So it's not like a bill's filed on the first Monday of the session affecting scope of practice and they're running it in public health that next Tuesday. They already have special rules that say, no, we have to let this sit out there a little while, let the public, have input, let the healthcare industry come to us. And as you know, Paul, those meetings where they hear these, they'll have 10, 15, 20 people signing up on both sides. I would argue these are some of the most debated, some of the most informative sessions that they have on any bill. And so as things stand, they're already getting, so much information. So as far as, maybe legislators not being in that profession, I think that's almost a good thing. So they can be like, okay, well, how does this affect my constituent back home? And, Josh Miller has said several times, he's not a doctor, but what he is, he's for freedom and liberty and let people having choices while also maintaining, the public safety within that, but allowing people to have more choices and expanding scope of practice where they can.
And, I did a parody just on the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards. This seems to be very similar, and I know this is on the at conduitnews.com. It's extremely similar. It's almost like a prophecy where you would have an Arkansas board of, that gives the license to the license board to give people licenses. I know it sounds crazy, but that's why it was so funny. That's why I wrote it, because I thought it would be funny. And, you think, well, they're never going to do this. And here they come trying to set up essentially the exact same thing.
Yeah, we'll see where this goes. Again, this was filed as a Senate bill first, has been adjusted a little bit. I was like, well, is this the same exact thing? And so I pulled up the bills, looking line by line, and they've adjusted a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's still trying to get the same goal established with this new healthcare council, which in effect is going to, be lobbying legislators, and they're going to turn to them and make them basically the experts on whether or not they need to expand the scope of practice bill or not, or licensing, and it goes pretty broad here. So
it really comes down to this. It comes down to this. Do you think that these licensing boards are to the point where they don't make mistakes? Now, I don't think anyone would say that that's true. Okay. So the next question is, do they tend to exist for public safety? Do they tend to exist for protection of their industry and protecting their money? Is it one or the other? Is it a mixture of both? I would say it's a mixture of both, but I would say that it slants to trying to protect the status quo, not for public safety, but for monetary gain or monetary maintenance, maintaining the status quo. I don't think these people then need to be made even more powerful by having some sort of super commission that's going to advise legislators and give them even more organizations to say no to, if you will, and to increase the pressure. And I think that's what this is designed to do. It's obviously an easy bill to oppose. Josh, the other bill is SJR 7. What can you tell us about SJR 7?
So SJR 7 is a proposed constitutional amendment. So I think we had over 40 proposed constitutional amendments that were filed this session from the legislatures, and they could only refer out up to 3. And so this is one of the proposals that may get out. I'm not sure it really will, but what this bill does, Paul, is says, hey, we're going to make this a full-time legislature. In effect, that's what it says. We're going to come every year, no more than 60 days, and have a regular legislative session. So right now, there's a regular legislative session every other year. And then there's a 30-day fiscal session every other year. But this say, hey, we're going to come together, have a regular legislative session every year, in effect making this a full-time legislature. And it also would give the power to the General Assembly to call special sessions. Right now, only the governor can call a special session, but this bill would also allow the General Assembly, the House and the Senate, to call a special session.
Well, that actually would be a great idea, that last part, I feel like. But I don't necessarily know I'm on board. I don't think I'm on board with having these guys up here every year, on what basis is this a bad idea, do you think, Josh?
Well, I think at the very least it provides twice the opportunity to grow government. I think this session is almost a point where people are holding on to their wallets till they sine die, so they have to hold on to them a lot longer. But inevitably, it would have to increase the per diem and mileage at the minimum, and it would just change the trajectory. I think here in Arkansas to think, well, this is a part-time legislature. People are, have jobs back home, and they come down every other year for the legislative session. It would kind of flip that on its head and come back and say that, we need to meet every year. And I think inevitably it would push more and more people who want to run for office into having to realize, hey, this is more of a full-time position. It would increase costs. And I don't think we need a full-time legislature here in Arkansas. It's not the way the framers intended it. And so I think we leave it where it's at and don't give more opportunity just to grow government if we don't have to.
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue with that. I really can't. I wish with the sessions the way they were now, we had a cap of the number of bills. I'd go further. I wish we could cap the number of the number of bills that could be passed every 2 years, because I just think 2,000 or 1,500, whatever. I think that's way too much. I mean, why so many pieces of legislation? It just seems redundant. But anyway, that's the Week 7 scorecard, Josh. And so I know you're working on Week 8. You're going to be looking at what's filed and coming up. And so we can't wait to have you back on, and we'll go over this again.
All right, sounds good, Paul. Thanks.
All righty, Josh.